Hi, Mata, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very well as well. I think this is our second session together now.
Yes, yes.
Alright.
I could clear the first round, so thank you for
Alright.
practicing with me.
Congrats. Well done.
Yeah,
And as always, like if you faced this particular question before, let me know and I'll change it entirely.
yeah, that's great.
Cool. So let's say you've joined Facebook recently and you're the PM of the reactions team, right? What success metrics would you set for your team?
So, few clarifying questions. When you say reactions team, reactions are the commenting or liking and sharing. Those are the actions, right?
So comments, sharings, and likes are different kinds of actions. Specifically, when I refer to the reactions team, I'm talking about the different
The
emojis. Yes.
emojis that are used across the board, like in anywhere.
Yes. So this
In
would apply
all
across our entire portfolio of products.
portfolio of products. Okay.
Yep.
My second question is if the reactions is sort of like newly launched feature or this exists and we just have to come up with success measure as a whole.
So let's take this hypothetical scenario where reactions have been launched recently. You as a new PM have an opportunity to decide, okay, what should our team's goals look like and how are you going to measure success in those contexts? That's what I'm asking you to set. So you have an opportunity to reset the slate from scratch.
Okay. It's launched recently. Got it.
Yep.
And are there any other constraints that I should be aware of?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, cool. The way I would handle this is first, I'd quickly talk about what is reactions in general and how it is helping Facebook and like whether it aligns with the overall Facebook strategy and mission. And then I'll come up with a goal and goal. First, I would think about what would be the user goal, and then second would be the business goal, or which will be like sort of reactions product goal and like Facebook product goal. And then I would think through the users and user actions and then come up with a couple of metrics and then evaluate and prioritize one true north and then a couple of like signpost metrics and then guardrail metrics. Does that sound good to you?
Yep, that sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, give me a few seconds. I'll just collect my thoughts. So I think about reactions as we spoke already. Like reaction is a way like people are sharing emojis, which is like sharing expressions ideally, and which is what I think Facebook's mission is also about that. One is like people can share and express what they feel about any particular topic, and then they can share openly with their friends and family. And Facebook also helps to connect the world and empowering tools and platforms to users. So I think the connection and then kind of is driven by meaningful conversations that are happening on the platform, and reaction is one of the ways that particular mission is kind of accomplished, which is what people can share and express their ideas through expressions using emojis, and it's kind of helping to have meaningful conversations among Facebook users.
Right?
So in terms of user goal, I think what I feel having this feature, definitely we are encouraging users to interact with any of the posts or videos they are watching and kind of share their ideas in a very quick and expressive manner instead of like really liking a video or just commenting. May not be able to share their expression in terms of are they happy or are they sad or are they angry, or they wanted to probably congratulate somebody instead of typing like quick emojis is helping them to quickly react to the post. And there are two ways it is helping. One is it is definitely helping the viewers who are watching and expressing their ideas or expressing their feelings, but at the same time who are posting, they are also getting a quick sort of feedback loop on their posts, and it is encouraging and motivating in a way. And overall I think it is helping also Facebook's engagement this way, because typing maybe sometimes it takes time, but emoji is very quick to express my ideas, and that way people are like reacting or engaging with the content more effectively.
All right. So what would you conclude out of this the overall goal would be for your team?
Yeah, so from a user goal standpoint, I think it would be more about product stickiness and delighted user experience. I mean, where users are able to do something more easily and, and do something easily in terms of like sharing expressions. And from the product goal or business goal standpoint, since like considering where Facebook is right now, its products and everything else, it has a strong DAU, MAU, and I mean, active users are like engaging with the platform very well. So how we can continue that momentum and enable that engagement. So I'll go for engagement as a business goal in the near term. Obviously, in long term, it will open up more channels for getting advertisement revenue. But primarily, I would focus on the engagement being the business goal, and user goal will be product stickiness and delighted user experience while sharing or their feelings towards any posts and views.
All right, so let's take engagement as a goal here. Given that this is the goal of the team, what are going to be some of the key metrics that you'll monitor along with your team?
Yeah, so next steps I was thinking like who are the users involved, ecosystem users. So there are two users I can see who are, one is like kind of creating the content, and the second group of users who are viewing the content and reacting with the content. So I think reacting is important, and when they react, they're leveraging this reactions and emojis. And I'll focus for this, even though we are like, I mean, engagement could be driven from any set of users, but it makes sense to focus more on the people who are reacting.
All right. Can you help me better understand why you'd look exclusively at this group?
Yeah, so the why I would pick up the reacting versus like creating, because I think reactions are generally shared by the users who are viewing the content and what is their opinion about the content or how they're feeling about the content. So I think like if we focus on this and their metrics, that will sort of help us to understand if the reactions are working effectively for the users. Definitely it is benefiting the creators and they're more motivated and they would probably post or create more content. However, if the reactions are not coming effectively, then they are not set up for success. So that is why I would like to focus more on the reaction side of the thing.
All right, fair enough. We'll go with that. So let's focus then on the reactors angle. What would be the metric you'd use for them?
Yeah. So in terms of reactors, I mean, if I had to think about their journey, when they are looking at comments or posts or when they're looking at posts or videos or feed or any of that, when they're trying to react and engage. So in that case, or it could be even messenger, right? Even messenger chat also reactions can be used. Essentially, what is triggering them to react is basically if they read the content and they feel something about that, whether they're happy, anger, or any other kind of emotions they would like to share. So they are trying to select or search for an emotion, and then they are selecting and that emotion and sort of clicking on that emotions and attaching to the post or video or messenger, wherever they are like looking at the content and reacting to it. So based on these actions, and there's a possibility that they're not able to find when they are searching for a content, or they found the content but they just decided not to use that emoji, and it could be whatever reason, but they decided not to use the emoji. So now what metrics I could think about at a high level for this is number of like searches for emoji contents and what kind of like search tags they are using.
Yep.
And then the clicks, number of clicks on the search results.
I just realized I didn't clarify very clearly earlier. When I was referring to the emojis, I was referring to the, say, when you hover over a like button, you see the 5 or 6 different options, which are deemed a reaction. So we'll limit the scope to only those for right now. We can discuss emojis at a future point in the interview. But for now, let's say we're only talking about those 5 or 6 different options you see, like anger, happiness, laughter, thankfulness, among the few.
Got it. So thanks for clarifying that. Then in that case, the search and all doesn't make sense. So in that case, like, so they are just hovering over the like button and they decide to pick an emoji and select, or they don't. So pick or don't pick. And then in this case, there are two things happening because it is related to emotions. So there are like either they are sharing a positive emotion or like negative emotion when they are anger or smiley or clap or all those can be considered as positive.
Yep.
And if there is a sad sign or anger, that means they are not like those are not considered like positive. So I can focus more on the positive reactions versus negative reactions.
Why would you choose to focus more on the positive?
No, so I'm saying like those are the two areas that I would focus. Positive.
Oh, all right. Okay, understood. Cool.
Yeah, not that one because
Okay.
I need to like sort of look at both.
All right.
And in terms of metrics, in that case, that I would look at definitely number of reactions per average users.
All right.
And another one I can think about is how many number of positive reactions per average user and negative reactions. The reason why I'm thinking of positive versus negative is because my time back to the goal, I'm trying to sort of drive the engagement. And if the reactions are negative for the content, maybe there is a chance that we may lose the users who are viewing the content and they may not eventually like sort of like the content being shared on the platform. And if there is any negative signal that is coming out of it, then that may impact the engagement overall.
All right. This is a very interesting point and we'll come back to it later. But for now, let's continue with some of the other metrics you track.
Yeah, so besides that, the other metric I would track is the DAU, MAU for reactions per se. When I said that, like what it meant by is daily active users or monthly or weekly active users who are sort of using reactions very frequently.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that those are some of the high level metrics I can think about. And you have any follow-up questions or should I go prioritizing one true north and couple of secondary?
Yes, we'll do the picking of the true north, but is there like think wide open, are there any other metrics you'd also choose to be able to track alongside what you already mentioned? It's okay if you don't have them, but just I'd like you to spend a little bit of more time thinking about what else you might want to track.
Yeah, just give me a few seconds. I'll just try to think what else I could. I think, another thing I can think about is sort of number of content that has the reactions.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be a total number, but
Yeah.
what would give me an interesting feedback, like at least the content where, again, tying back to the goal, like where we are trying to encourage user to express their feelings.
Yep.
And to have the conversations more meaningful on the platform so that everybody feels connected. So this number of contents with reactions would give me an idea like which are the content looks like more interesting to the end users.
All right, cool. This is good stuff. Fine. Out of all that we've mentioned so far, which would you pick as your primary metric? Maybe the one that you would make an OKR for your team around.
Yeah, so the true north would be definitely the DAU or the MAU. The reason, and then when I say DAU, MAU, it's for the reactions. And A means like active users, they're coming and using this feature frequently. When I say frequently, like for DAU, it's daily or monthly or weekly. And in addition, they are also sort of not only using, but they're like clicking, at least instead of like, they are using one of those emojis.
All right, got it. Tell me why this is a better metric to use when compared to, for instance, reactions used per user.
Yeah, so the thing is that reactions used per user will give a good idea like how many users are like using the reactions on an average basis and if it is trending up or down. But it would not give me an idea like how engaged they are in terms of like how frequently they are using, whether they are using it on a daily basis, a weekly basis or monthly basis. And tracking that would be helpful because in case anything goes wrong and if we are like trending, we can quickly identify the trends like the week over week or month over month and then sort of assess like any changes we are bringing into the reactions feature, if we are on track and making a meaningful impact based on our overall like goal, which is to drive engagement.
All right, got it. Thanks for sharing that. Cool. Let's move tracks slightly. All right. You'd mentioned earlier that there might be you'd want to track, say, negative reactions per user as well. Let's dig into that a little bit deeper. All right. Let's say that Facebook has recently rolled out a new type of reaction. Let's hypothetically assume the angry reaction wasn't present. All right. And you are the PM who's responsible for launching that. How are you going to go about doing this?
Angry reactions. Okay. So this one is a new feature that is something coming from the end users as a request, or as a PM I'm thinking about I should add more reactions and one of these is angry reaction and I'm deciding whether I should add it or not.
Let's say it's the latter. Currently, we know that in live Facebook, we have like, we have love, we have haha, we have wow, we have the sad face. Let's say you as the PM, based on all the feedback you've seen from users, based on the sort of comments you've seen, you've decided we should also roll out an angry reaction. All right. The decision has been made. So you are rolling it out. Now, my question to you is, as the PM of that team, how would you actually go about rolling it out? So what would be your launch strategy?
Okay. So the decision is made and then
yes.
More about
Let's say the
launch.
decision. Yes.
Okay. The launch strategy, if that is the case, I would like to do a sort of, first of all, if there is any like easy or scrappy way to understand the data, and then when I say understand the data and then do ramp up plan, I mean, I would like to do that first, leveraging the data scientist. If say there is no meaningful data that would tell like how I should ramp, and then I would do A/B test. And what I meant by that is whether like there is data in terms of data means there's way to look at like who are the users sort of maybe commenting on the posts or videos and all like that, like having some angry expressions. And that's where we learned that we need an angry emoji because people are like typing it, and having an emoji would make things easier and quicker for them. And looking at that data, like which is the user segment, primarily sort of having that most of the time. And then in the initial launch, we can first of all target to those users and then ramp eventually. But if say we do not have that data or the target user segment is not clear and say we are trying to launch for everybody, then I would go with A/B test. So I'll pause here. Any questions so far, or I can walk through like how would I go about doing A/B test?
No, I did have a first question also. Let's say we did identify there's a certain category of posts where people, let's take political posts for instance, which lead to extreme reactions, are also the sort where we've been seeing a lot of angry comments. Why would you choose to, even if you identified these as a good target, tell me again why you choose to restrict your launch strategy only to these?
So it's just that I did not say like I'll restrict only to these. I said like in the initial ramp, like the first group of users try to use with this group to see if it is widely used or not. And then eventually I would ramp to other users. That's what I was saying.
All right, understood.
Because as a PM, I'm thinking again, trying back to the goal. If my goal is to drive engagement, I need to make sure if I'm releasing a feature, it's being used effectively. And that is what I was meant by like an initial ramp. I'll at least focus on these users to quickly assess if this is helping. Because if I give it to like users who are not even using angry expressions, and if I target to those users, they still won't use it. And overall with this launch, it would not like it may not impact negatively, but it won't impact anyways positively for the engagement.
All right. So let's say we've chosen to go with a say ramp up strategy to launching it. What are some of the risks associated with that?
So should I talk about the A/B test part or hold on to that and just talk about the risk first?
Let's discuss the risk of a ramp up strategy first, although we will discuss the A/B test option a little while later as well.
Sounds good. So yeah, definitely I can think about risk with this. The thing is that angry reaction is not a positive reaction. So overall, it may demotivate the commenters or
apologies. I want to clarify my question. So I'm right now much more interested in the risks associated with just the launch strategy. Yeah. So let's say we only roll out a new angry emoji to a selected group of users or to a selected group of posts where we think it's the right there's a fit there potentially. What would be some of the risks associated with launching it to this restricted user group?
What would be some of the risk in terms of you're saying more in like user, or in general, like what other risk could be possible
We can
in
discuss both.
downstream impact or any of that kind?
We can discuss both.
Okay. Yeah, so the risk could be like, I mean, we launch it and people still do not use it. That, I mean, even though we restrict to the users who were using like in textual inferences. Other risk I can think about is people used to comment and now they would use reactions more. So the number of comments may go down, and because they would start using reactions, that is another impact I can think about. And yeah, I can. And then in terms of launch, like, I mean, another thing I can think about, if we are like doing more likes, or sorry, the emojis we are using, then whether in from platform standpoint any scalability issues or any of that we will face. Third is user behavior standpoint. If we are promoting sort of negative behavior more, that is another concern or risk I may think about. I mean, whether they will stop doing positive, and they are probably the users who likes to be the violator or sort of create the negativity for any posts or videos. So if we will encourage that behavior is another concern I can think about, or risk I can think about.
All right, that sounds great. We'll come back to this in a second. Let's say we choose to go with an A/B test setup instead of a ramped up launch strategy. How would that look different?
Yeah, so in A/B test, I think, I mean, some of these risks that I highlighted could be checked early on and see how it is impacting overall our true north and usage of this metric. So the way I would launch the A/B test is, of course, there will be a control and a variance. In the control group would not have that feature being launched. I mean, the angry feature won't be available. And then there will be a variance in which the angry reaction would be available. And when the users are sort of like being tested through A/B test experience, we will also look at the metrics and say control, like say for example, it will remain flat, but when we introduce the variance experience, what would happen to our true north, and some of the guardrail metrics. When I talk about guardrail, in the guardrail metrics, I can look at what I was saying, like maybe number of comments that is probably going down, or in overall, like, are we promoting any of the negative behavior, and that could be sort of checked through some qualitative survey, and also looking at the customer complaints or GCO, like global customer operations tickets. That's another aspect that I could look at. And overall, like, also engagement across the platform if it is impacted in any ways.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about the actual execution of the A/B test. How will you determine which users are in control and which are in variant?
Yeah, so sorry, I forgot to mention that actually, that I had thought about talking about it. So yeah, so the users in the control group, I would not limit or restrict to anybody. I would probably sort of keep it to everyone, and then same for the variance group.
All right, so basically your target would be 100% of Facebook's users.
Yeah, because it's like A/B test, and good part is like Facebook is already blessed with a lot of data, so we can leverage that, and then we can use that as a added benefit, and we can go with that.
And let's say we are targeting 100% of Facebook's traffic. How would you decide who goes in a variant and who goes into base control?
Yeah, so I think I would not, like, I'll keep the sample, say target segment the same. I would not change for the both. And what I would do, rather, like in the variance, I would show the negative reactions versus not.
All right. No, but my question is more about, let's say, how would Facebook decide whether you as a user would see that angry reaction, but me as a user would, what kind of logic would you implement to distribute people?
Okay. Yeah. So I would probably do like sample like 50%.
All right. And how would you allocate the samples here? So I'm talking more about the execution. We have, let's say hypothetically, we have 2 billion users. How do you determine which ones will see the angry reaction and which ones won't?
Yeah, so I mean, there is definitely somewhat I could do. Like, the way I would distribute the sample is say 2 billion active users are there, and out of 2 billion, say about 30% use angry expressions in their comments. So I will pick those 30% user and say out of 2 billion, if it is say, or like say to make it easy, 50% they use. So 1 billion active user are not using angry expression and 1 billion active users are using. So what I would do is like this 1 billion who are using the active expressions, I would again like probably divide that and then have like 50% of that in the variance group and 50% of that in the control group, and also remaining 1 billion who do not use a negative expression, I'll also pick like 50% in control group and 50% remaining 50% in variance. So ideally it'll have a combination of both kind of users who use angry expressions and who do not use angry expressions.
All right, understood. And how long would you run this A/B test for?
A/B tests are usually expensive, so I would not run for a long time. The way I would assess this is like there are 3 ways. So in the short term, mid-term and long-term impact I would think about. So long-term impact is more on the TAU, MAU. In the short term, like I would focus on the usage. And in the mid-term would be more about like, are there any signs I'm seeing like where it is impacting the ecosystem? And based on this, the metrics that I would have, and I will probably run an experiment like not more than couple of weeks or maximum a month or few months. When I say few months, it's like hardly 1 or 2 months, but not more than that.
All right. And you mentioned that A/B tests can be usually expensive. What did you mean by that?
So A/B test needs a lot of data to run, and also to understand the downstream impact. There's like heavy data processing happens, and then you derive the results, and then you monitor those results, and it is expensive in that way, like in terms of cost to serve. And yeah, so keeping that in mind, I would not like run it for very long.
All right. So if you had to pick the minimum period you would want to run an A/B test for, how long do you think that would be?
Given that like Facebook is it's a data rich company already, so I believe the sample size would be good enough for us to decide it sooner than later. And the second is like we will also learn some early on signal, like what metrics would be making sense to track. We can like move to a dashboard monitoring mechanism from there. Given these facts, I would like to, and A/B tests are a good part is that, and even after that, like we have like ramp up mechanism through leaks, and if we see really something odd, we can have always rollback feature. So with that in mind, I would not like run more than like 2 to 3 weeks.
So that's the maximum that you've estimated, but if you had to just brute force estimate what the minimum duration would be for you to realistically see results, and I'm just looking for a hunch, so to speak, what do you think that would be? Do you think you could maybe see the results in a day or 2 days, or do you think it'll take longer than that?
So given that the data is very big, sample size data is big, and based on the downstream report, like how quickly it comes, so there are analytical processing happening on the background. It depends on that I do not know enough about Facebook in general, but with my experience at LinkedIn, usually it takes the reports to come 2 to 3 days. So if that is the case, based on like how long it takes the reports to be generated to understand the downstream impact, based on that I would decide to run minimum at least to that duration.
Got it. Understood.
So what I'm trying to say is this experimentation velocity.
Understood. All right. And one last question. So when setting up the A/B test, you explained how you would sample the folks into different buckets and make sure there was an even distribution. What do you think some of the risks with doing this could be?
Yeah, so there will be risk of bias that may come into picture because we are equally distributing. So we would not know clearly the bias. To eliminate that bias, I could think about adding one more variance where I would just focus on, or adding 1 or 2 more variants where I could focus on just the people who are just reacting or like having angry expressions. And also there will be another variance where the people do not have any angry expressions in their comments. So, and then that would give me little more clarity and eliminate the bias aspect that may contribute if we equally distribute.
All right, understood. Cool. What do you think some of the technical challenges would be in setting up such an experiment?
Yeah, so I guess building the data pipelines is a very critical part. So if there are already existing data pipeline, that's great, but definitely with new feature, you may have to add those attributes to the data pipeline. So there's a cost involved in setting up the data pipeline. And also, as we discussed the A/B test, what would be the A/B test? Like if we run with single variants, or like what would be the sample size, and if we should think about bias and other aspects. So there's also a need to have an experimentation design as we are launching new feature. In that, there is a development cost involved with that. So these are some of the aspects we need to think through, and also volume of data. But given like Facebook is data rich company, so I would not worry about volume of data as much. And since it is a new launch, that may also can add a little bit concern in terms of volume of data. We may not have like good data available with the new launch. So we have to probably learn it over a period of time.
All right, got it. So let's say when deploying, let's say we are ready to deploy, all our technical architecture is built up, and we've gone the A/B test route, launched it globally through a sample data set. Let's say you've observed a result where people are using the angry reaction, but the overall usage of reactions has now gone down. How would you choose to react to this finding?
Yeah, first of all, I'll try to understand when you say overall usage reactions went down, how big is the impact? So what I meant by that is with every new launch as a PM, I would have a thresholds for every metrics. And if the drop is within the threshold or drop or up within the threshold, I would not be concerned as much. But if it is beyond the threshold, then I would take some other steps. So if you can clarify that, like how big is the impact?
So before I clarify, what do you think a reasonable threshold here would be that you would accept?
For the usage reactions?
Yes, yep.
Going down. Overall, I think like usually like plus or minus 5%.
All right.
So, okay.
Yeah. So can you help me understand what could be some of the things that could drive a drop in reactions?
Yeah, so overall reactions you are talking about?
Yep.
So it did go up in the angry, but overall reactions went down.
Yes, indeed.
So I guess what might be the challenge would be the content. I mean, I can associate with the content being generated, and if the content quality is sort of impacted, so people are negatively reacting to the content. And in general, the reactions like engaging with the content in a meaningful way could be impacted. So that is my hypothesis I can think about.
Okay, how would you validate this hypothesis?
So the way I would go about validating this hypothesis in a couple of ways. And there could be also other hypothesis I can think about, like defects or bugs associated with this. So right. I assume, are you talking about, so maybe I should have asked this question to you before. Are you talking about this drop and peak is happening? I should think more in terms of root cause analysis or more of a trade-off?
No, I think for now we're going to discuss it as a trade-off. And just to clarify, let's say we've run an A/B test, you've rolled out a new reaction. So clearly the usage of the new reaction will be up because in control there is no new reaction. But for among the other metrics you're looking at, the drop in the usage of reactions as a feature or as a product has gone down, let's say by 11%, hypothetically. So it's above your threshold. All right. Yeah. So we can attribute it to whatever you've done during the launch. Yeah. But I'm trying to understand how you as a PM would react to finding this in your results. What would you look at? What would you choose to hypothesize as a result? And how would you execute on validating that?
So in terms of since this is confirmed that this like launch is causing issue, and the hypothesis that I earlier stated that it could be that the content quality is sort of going down, and then people are like reacting to features less, and then obviously the negative reactions are going up. And how would I go validate this? Well, this is related to user behavior. So I'd look at like if there are any user complaints or sort of any customer support tickets are like available or increased, and I'll also look at reviews. And besides that, I can also conduct some qualitative survey with the users to understand. So these are some of the things that I can do ASAP to understand what's happening and to validate my hypothesis around the negative quality. And also I will look at like, what is the overall engagement besides this like reactions going up and down. If the overall engagement is not impacted, then maybe it's not like as much to worry about. But say if overall engagement is also impacted, in that case, I may consider after collecting this data to roll back and then think through more deeply to understand what other strategy can be used, or maybe not negative reaction is not a good way to show in the emojis, but there's some other way to express, like if people are not liking the comment, it could be feedback loop on the comment or something. So that way it is not easily available for users to use negative reactions, but collecting the feedback in a proper way about the content that would give me direct signals as content quality versus reactions.
You mentioned something very interesting that I want to dig deeper, and this will be my last question, don't worry. It's that you mentioned you look at engagement as a whole. So let's take that scenario as well. You've rolled out this angry reaction and you've seen there's a huge drop in the number of comments happening, right? The comments team is obviously really annoyed because that's their bread and butter and that's what they optimize for. How are you going to decide whether to go live or not? Your usage of the angry reaction has gone up, but the number of comments has gone down. How would you make this trade-off?
So I think this is a good call out. I think first of all, definitely empathize with the comments group. Their bread and butter is that. But as I said, like I'll be always focused on short term, mid-term and long term. My long term goal is to make sure engagement is going up and it's reacting well. And in terms of like engagement going up, it's all comes down to users. And if users are happy with this feature being there, maybe in the short term we see there is a drop in the comments, but overall like the meaningful engagement with the content is still happening, and in the long term that will be beneficious for Facebook. And what comments team can focus is like really, it also helps them like comments team to focus on real comment quality and see like what are the meaningful conversations happening on the comment side instead of like, and they can actually save a lot of like just simple negative comments. And in fact, like the comments could be more influential, like it could be leveraged in many different ways, those comments. I mean, when we say many different ways, an example I could tell, like say shopping experience, in that if say there is any comments happening between the customer and the salesperson, so if those comments could like lead to more higher conversions, those kind of insights can be derived. So eventually it would work win-win for Facebook comments and reactions team in long term. So based on that, I would decide to go with still continue with the feature.
Understood. So I got your thought process around the long-term solution, but let's say you have to make a decision tomorrow. Now that your A/B test has been running a few weeks, you've seen that your feature is getting used, but it has caused a decrease in comments. How are you going to make this very real-world decision?
So I would also check the overall engagement, right? So if overall engagement in terms of engaging with the content has not like changed, then that would be my data point to make a decision whether I should continue with this or not. And there's always rollback option available, like later on also we want to ramp down, we can do so. So I would not worry about holding it.
All right, got it. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to conclude this interview now and do a quick loop of feedback so that you have a chance to also absorb some of that. I'll go section by section and then we can drill down into anything that you might have follow-up questions on. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. So I think the first question I said was, how would you measure, like how would you put success metrics for the reactions team, set goals, etc.? I thought you handled that well at the start. You had good clarifying questions. You flagged out upfront that you will be coming up with a goal. It's sometimes an opportunity to also ask. It can cut across a lot of the initial part of the interview, particularly in an execution style interview, because there the interviewers often just provide you with the goal upfront. They'll be like, hey, today we're going to be optimizing for monetization, or for, in this case, I would have said engagement, which you came to as a conclusion yourself, but we didn't spend too much time on it because that's much more of a product sense question, unless asked explicitly as what would the goals be for this team. But I thought you did a good job of linking it to the mission. There was some good storytelling there. The next part you did then is picking, when setting metrics, you picked reactors. This part I didn't understand entirely because my question to you was, what would be your success metrics? It didn't really need prioritization at this time, in my view. It's actually a good opportunity for you to say, hey, this is like with a lot of stuff Facebook does, kind of akin to a marketplace. There are the content creators and there are the content reactors, and they create a feedback loop of virality which drive each other. So I'm going to be very careful to make sure I measure both angles. And then when pushed to choose a North Star or pushed to choose one, that is when you might want to prioritize, because otherwise you cut yourself out the opportunity of actually talking about what the creator side reaction metrics would be, which sometimes a lot of experts or interviewers would ask you to look exclusively at that. Like, how do we get the first like for a post, or how do we get a certain amount of engagement that would drive a post into virality as an entire interview question. Right. So this part would be my feedback here. There's no need to do prioritization upfront unless you're pushed into it. I thought you came up with good metrics for reactors. If I could suggest, like, this sounded slightly over the place, although you covered all of them, all the important ones. There is a really easy framework to follow for things like this. Usually when it comes to any kind of metrics that tie into a North Star, you'd want to look at breadth, depth, frequency, and value. All right. So breadth is the number of users who use it. This would map to your daily active users and monthly active users. Depth is how many times they've used it. So for a good example of depth here might be, hey, a user liked 17 posts in one day, or liked 5 posts and 3 messages in one day, and stuff like that. Then frequency is how frequently these users come back. Like, does a person just come to Facebook, use reactions or like stuff once a week? Do they come every day? Do they end up coming like once a month? Because this is the one that ties back to retention. All right. And then finally there's the value, which is what the experience is like, what they felt when they used it. Was there like a delight factor? Was there a sparkle when they clicked that like button? Did they get a feedback loop? Did it lead to any further interaction for them, which again ultimately ties to retention? So all 4 metrics usually give a really holistic view, and then you don't run the risk of missing anything. I thought you did cover most of these when you talked about reactions per average user. Positive reactions and negative reactions is something I'll get to in a second. The daily active users was good. And on the creator side, when I pushed you came up with how much content was reacted to. I thought there was a little bit of room to improve there, because there are certain things like, okay, how much time did it take to generate the first reaction? What was the total number of reactions, or what was the long tail? Also, in this context, you're talking about just reactions, but it's also good to flag out that a typical user would be tracking a bunch of other stuff as well, be it comments, likes, shares, and likes and other reactions will be one part of the equation. So we can't make judgment calls on the basis of this. So that just shows that you're aware of the entire ecosystem as a whole. But overall here, I thought you did a decent job. There was some room to improve. The part that I really thought you entered into dangerous territory with was the positive and negative reactions, because there's something really fundamentally difficult to judge, because you might show sadness because people are sympathizing or empathizing with you. You might show anger because you show agreement, and you might show happiness or laughter because you're making fun of someone. So mapping emotions to reactions is dangerous territory. I didn't go down that route. But some interviewers latched onto that and asked you, okay, how do you prove this? How do you actually measure the impact of this on a user's happiness or a user's sadness, or whether this created a positive environment or not? All right. So just be very aware. You open a can of worms when you talk about them in terms of how the user experiences. So it's something to be done warily and done with eyes open. Then be prepared to talk about that in more depth as well. Okay.
So I have a quick question on this.
Yep.
So ideally I used to do before like creator and reactor. I mean, covering both the users. But most of the time I got a feedback like pick one and move one with one. So that is when I started like not talking. I mean, I did talk about the 2 users, but not in terms of metrics. So but
I think this is actually something you should take into account, because different interviewers have different expectations also, but give them the opportunity to say, hey, do you want me to focus on just one? That way then nobody is ever going to blame you for making that call.
And then you said not to focus on the negative and positive reactions. And similarly, if there is a trust related thing that comes into picture, trust is also hard to measure. So should I stay away from trust?
So I think I wouldn't say stay away from any of these topics because they make really good content for an interview, but I'd say prepare in advance how you're going to react to them because they're very hard to measure, all right? And Facebook has been covered in the news for all these topics, so interviewers will be very, very interested in any insight you can generate for them. So it can be if you're well prepared for that angle, it can be a really cool thing to discuss that, hey, this is how I would tangibly measure trust in the platform. Or this is how I would conclusively measure the impact of a positive or negative reaction. All right. You recall that experiment that Facebook had done years ago to measure sadness levels and the likelihood of people making sadness related posts, which was actually conclusive. So these topics are things that certain interviewers will be quite sensitive to, especially if they have more experience.
Got
it. Good. Then the next part was the launch strategy. Good clarification there on what the scope was. Here I thought there was some room for improvement. I thought some parts you did clearly well was identifying that there are two options, like I would ramp up to only certain segments at a time. I challenged you on what some of the risks with this would be. I thought you covered most of them really well. The biggest risk of a ramp up strategy, of course, is that you won't know what the impact across those people who haven't used it would be till you actually roll it out to them, right? Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, you should develop an opinion for yourself for which rollout strategy you would prefer. Like, would you go big bang with something for everyone in an A/B test and get feedback across an entire diverse bunch of users upfront, or would you roll things out step by step? Now, this is a very subjective thing. In this, the risk is relatively low, although you could argue that since it's a negative reaction, the risk is relatively high. But either way, it would have been useful to know what you thought. Like, you've given two options. I kind of didn't give you an opportunity to express that though, so I'm not going to fault you for that. But it's something to also proactively contribute if you get a chance. That, hey, I know I could do a ramped rollout where I roll out to one group of users next and so on. Or I could just roll it out to everyone and observe metrics across everyone. I would probably lead with X because Y. So that just makes it very clear what you as a PM are pitching for. I actually had no problems at all with the ramp up strategy, but when it came to the A/B testing, I saw quite a few things where I thought you could have done a little bit better. So you explained the fundamentals well, that control will remain flat, variant will basically see reactions. There are some really important nuances here that I would expect a PM to kind of flag out as well. So a good example is, let's take reactions only as an example. Let's say half the users see a reaction and half don't, all right? What happens when, say, people in variant post that angry reaction, a post? Would people in base see this reaction exist? Would they only have the ability to not post a reaction, but they could see it? Or would they also not see that there is a reaction there at all? So this nuance we didn't cover at all. There's also the possibility of you came up with quite a sophisticated mechanism for deciding which users fall into control and variant. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there are actually two schools of thought. Like, should we do completely randomized sampling or should we do stratified sampling when it comes to A/B tests? And Facebook cares deeply about this because it makes a huge difference to results in general. All right. So if when you sample users, when you do stratified sampling, you introduce a huge bias because you have already made a certain judgment about what users want and what users' behavioral patterns are, which would completely nullify your results. So there is a big danger in doing that, and I would expect that to be proactively contributed here as well. The third danger with the system that you'd set up here, and by the way, all this is constructive, but I'm contributing it because an infra PM will most definitely be familiar with a lot of these topics, so you might get challenged on it. I think on an average PM interview, maybe they wouldn't go too deep into it, but this is just useful knowledge for you to have. It's that if you've pre-sampled users, if you've already allocated users into control and variant, then you don't really know which of those will even enter the ecosystem. So let's take an example where all the negative reactions are coming, say, from hypothetically users who are in India. Your variant will suddenly, and these users that you've pre-allocated now into control and variant, the ones that you've randomized into variant don't log in for some reason. Your reaction usage will be artificially low simply because people haven't logged in, or people haven't come into Facebook, and would have nothing to do with the reaction itself, right? Which I tried to lead you in the direction of discovering when I asked you, okay, reactions usage has fallen, and you defaulted to assuming it might be because there's an angry reaction, or it might be related to the launch. It was related to the launch, but it might also be related to how you've sampled users. It might be related to other ancillary metrics, like maybe comment usage spiked as a consequence of you introducing the angry reactions. So the whole point of an A/B test and those guardrail metrics and signpost metrics you listed out is to see what else might happen that might be related to it. And as a PM, I would expect you to go back to those metrics and talk about what those angles might be. All right.
Okay.
Any questions at this point? I can go a little bit deeper into this if you want.
No, I think this is good.
All right. So overall, though, when it came to the A/B testing part, the next question I asked was around, or actually before this, I asked what would be the technical setup in an A/B test. Basically, here there are two choices. You can pre-allocate users before the test launches, which is a risky proposition because you don't know if these users that you've allocated will even use Facebook in that time. You might accidentally end up putting a lot of users into base or variant who just might not use it, maybe due to a certain world event, maybe there was a hurricane in some part of the world so nobody used Facebook, or there was a COVID outbreak so if only people in variant used it, and that could lead to problems. The much more accepted format for setting up an A/B test is to allocate people randomly into base or variant when they start using a system. So someone logs into Facebook, their newsfeed is loading. That's the point at which they've been randomly allocated into base or variant. And again, I would not ask that question normally. I've asked it only because you have a technical infrastructure kind of PO asking you as your hiring manager who'll be interviewing you, and he might. All right. Okay. So pinch of salt. I wouldn't expect this question to come up in an average execution interview.
Okay.
Finally, we discussed some of the topics around, yes, how would you make trade-offs? So I thought you had good answers there. I would choose to make those even more explicit. So for instance, when you say I'm going to look at overall engagement, become very specific. Say that, all right, let's say my usage of my angry emoji is 5 and earlier it was 0, and comments earlier were 100 and they've gone down to 98. So overall my engagement, my absolute engagement number has gone up and I have no problem with this. Maybe further down the line, I might add a sophisticated logic which weighs comments stronger because it's a bigger emotional expression compared to a reaction. Maybe I choose to weigh it lower if that's where our priorities are leading in the direction of. But for a simple data-driven judgment, I just look at the absolute number of reactions, and if that's gone up in my variant, then that for me is a conclusive signal that I have added value. Right. On the flip side, for topics like what the acceptable threshold drop might be, for how you'd set that up, this part I did not, and I'll admit I didn't entirely get your reasoning. I think you'd explained some angles of what if there were fewer users in variant, but I kind of lost you over there. But there can be very good reasons for having an acceptable threshold loss. Like when you roll out a new product feature or a new feature, there's often a learning period. Like people are like, hey, holy crap, what is this? It might confuse people from using it. Also, like seeing a new thing can lead to people trying to understand better, maybe even dropping off from Facebook to Google, hey, what are all these new reactions? So having an acceptable loss is a really good practice, and I thought that's something most PMs aren't aware of. So I thought that was a good thing that you flagged out, that I would be perfectly okay with a temporary loss. Midterm and long term, I'd have all these safeguards that I would monitor to make sure there isn't a cost to it. Finally, when it came to how much time, what would be the minimum time you would run or the maximum time or realistic time you would need, there are two things that it's worth contributing here when it comes to an A/B test. The first is the idea of a power calculation. So you would want to do what is the minimum duration I would need to run this test to get a conclusive signal given the number of users that I expect, right? This is rather fundamental to A/B tests in general. I would recommend Googling it if you aren't familiar with it, because this is nearly definitely something they would expect you to be aware of, because it's quite crucial that you set a runtime before launching the test.
What is the name you said?
The power calculator. It's known as the A/B test power calculator. Yes. Okay. So it's a simple formula which says that, hey, if I have an average of say 1 million users in base and 1 million users in variant, and my expected impact size is X, and that X could be say a 2% increase in reaction usage or a 5% increase in reaction usage, then I would need to run this test for a minimum period of X weeks. It is always in multiples of weeks, because for the vast majority of products, there is a very clear weekday versus weekend pattern, because especially for social media products, the usage patterns are totally different for weekdays and weekends, right? So these are just good things to throw into the mix in an interview like this, because they show your awareness of how A/B tests run and what are some of the safeguards that you would typically take into account. So when I was asking you the minimum duration you'd run it for, the minimum would nearly always be 1 week. Because you would always want to cover a Monday to Sunday or say Sunday to Saturday period to ensure all that behavior pattern is covered. And then how many weeks would always be a multiple of what your minimum power calculator suggests, rounded up to the number of weeks. So if your power calculator says you will need a minimum of 12 days, you will have actually end up running that experiment for 14 days.
Okay.
So that's basically my feedback for you. Do you have any questions?
No, I think this is great. I've had a lot of blind spots, so I uncovered that and super useful.
All right, I'm glad to hear it. Best of luck for your interview. I hope you get through, and all the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, please subscribe. Our website is prepfully.com. We've got lots of interview questions there. You can also schedule a mock interview with one of our experts. You can find the link in the description below. All the best from us at Prepfully, and we hope you totally rock your interview.